Hi, I'm Yaron Ilan. I'm the chairman of medicine at the Hadassah Hebrew Medical Center in Jerusalem. I'm a gastroenterologist and hepatologist by training and the former president of the Israel Liver Association. I'm an immunologist and I'm doing a lot of research, both preclinical and clinical, in the development of immune pharmaceutical products for patients with inflammatory bowel disease and fatty liver disease, and currently working with several mid-sized and large pharmaceutical companies on the development of this program. Over the last few months, I joined Immune Pharmaceutical in the development of bertolini, the anti-eotaxin monoclonal antibody for the treatment of fatty liver disease and inflammatory bowel diseases.
We're talking a little bit about NASH. What is it? Why is it a medical priority right now?
So fatty liver disease affects around a third of the Western world population. But in fact, over the last few years, we have heard and learned that even in the Far East, the numbers are increasing and are going to reach that number very soon. Out of the 30% of the patients who suffer from fatty liver disease, which is the accumulation of fat in the liver and has to do with obesity, the obesity epidemic, between 2 to 8% will develop the severe form of the disease, which is called NASH, which stands for non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. In that disease, patients who already have fat in their liver develop inflammation, which moves on to fibrosis of the liver and cirrhosis of the liver, and then they will develop end-stage liver disease, which can also deteriorate to primary liver cancer. But because NASH is such a common disease, it's gradually becoming the number one cause for liver transplantation, and is one of the major reasons for the increase, or tremendous increase, of the number of patients suffering from primary liver cancer. Unfortunately, up to date, there is no approved therapy for NASH. So it's a real unmet need for what we believe is the next global epidemic of the world.
So let's take it a little bit further. Let's talk about NASH and the immune system.
So NASH, as I said, is an accumulation of fat in the liver, which on top of that, there is a lot of inflammation or activation of the immune system. Various pathways of the immune system are being activated in patients with NASH, and they affect the liver on top of the fat in the liver to induce damage to the cell, leading to fibrosis of the cell, liver cirrhosis, and then cancer. So the immune system plays a major role in NASH. And we also have to remember that NASH develops mainly in patients who are obese, and obese patients suffer from chronic low-level inflammation. So the immune system plays a major role in obesity, plays a major role in NASH, and targeting the immune system is now becoming one of the major targets for immune therapies, or for therapies who are targeting various pathways of the immune system for treatment of the disease.
Let's talk a little bit about NASH and the work that Immune is doing.
So NASH is a complication of fatty liver disease, which is a very common disease. And it was found both in animal models of NASH and in humans with that disease that there is high levels of eotaxin 1. Eotaxin 1 is not just a simple biomarker for that disease, it is also a target for immune therapy. Because in animal models it was shown that if you target eotaxin 1, the biomarker that is elevated in patients with NASH, you can alleviate the disease. Immune Pharmaceutical has developed an antibody called bertolini who target eotaxin 1. And in animal models, it was shown that if you use this antibody in these animals who have the disease or similar diseases, you not only alleviate the immune inflammation, you also touch on some of the major cells that are in the fundamental for the pathogenesis of the disease. So by using the antibodies that Immune is using, we are targeting eotaxin 1, which is a major biomarker, and we are also targeting the pathogenesis of the disease by targeting the most important cells that induce the liver damage. That's why we believe that by using it in humans, we may see an alleviation of the disease.
So the work that Immune is doing with NASH, why is this so important to the public?
So as I said before, NASH is a global epidemic. It affects a huge number of the world population, and currently there is no approved therapy for NASH. And we don't see that in the foreseen future there will be a therapy approved, because all the drugs that are currently being tested carry major side effects and are all in very complicated large clinical trial. Immune have a very simple antibody which targets eotaxin 1, which is elevated in patients with NASH. And it's not elevated just as a simple biomarker. It is elevated because it has to do with fundamentally with the pathogenesis of the disease, with attracting inflammatory cells and attracting the right cells which are damaging the liver. So if we target eotaxin 1, there is a high chance that we will alleviate the disease by targeting the pathogenesis of the disease. So I believe that if we move forward with the clinical trials with the upcoming months, next year we will be able to show in humans a real effect of that antibody in patients with NASH.
So Immune is doing some important work when it comes to Crohn's disease and colitis. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I guess the first question people ask, why target Crohn's and colitis if there are hundreds of drugs for Crohn's and colitis in the market? And the answers comes from the American Gastroenterology Association last year news, where they put up a bulletin saying, indeed biological are working in patients with Crohn's and colitis, but we are only helping half of the patients. Half of the patients do not get into a remission with all the currently biologicals that are being used. So obviously there is a real need in the world of Crohn's of colitis. If we go to these patients and we go to the pathogenesis of the disease, you see high levels of eotaxin 1 in the tissues of these patients. Eotaxin 1 is not just a simple biomarker in these tissues. Eotaxin 1 has to do with the attraction of lymphocytes, those cells that induce inflammation in these patients, to very high levels in these patients. And indeed, the more severe the disease is, the higher the levels of eotaxin 1. So eotaxin 1 has to do with degree of severity of the disease in patients with inflammatory bowel disease. Bertolizumab is an antibody that targets eotaxin 1 specifically. It doesn't target anything else. It just targets eotaxin 1. And in animal models, it was shown very profoundly that if you target eotaxin 1 in animal models of Crohn's and of colitis, you can significantly alleviate the disease, reduce inflammation, improve survival, improve all the clinical outcome of these mice, and improve the histology. The company is currently running a phase 2A clinical trial using this drug in patients with ulcerative colitis, the results of which are expected next year, and we hope to see good results because we are targeting not only a biomarker, we are targeting the real pathogenesis of the disease.